right, here we go. Hello again, and welcome to this wonderful Shiny for Good session. And today we have Judy Ryan with us. She's going to be telling us all about climate smart agriculture, and she'll be sharing with us her insights so far. So, a quick introduction: JD is a cat obsessed environmental data scientist from Washington State Department of Agriculture. And today she'll be sharing her work on the innovative use of Shiny to have interactive greenhouse gas estimates, custom reports, how to visualize the impact of conservation practices, and all the other good stuff. So now I hand over to JD to tell us more about her work.
Hi, my name is Judy Ryan. I'm a data scientist at the Washington State Department of Agriculture. One of the programs I support is the Sustainable Farms and Fields statewide grant program. It's led by the Washington State Conservation Commission and part of the Soil Health Initiative. The Sustainable Farms and Fields program incentivizes climate smart agriculture, which makes it easier and more affordable for farmers and ranchers to implement conservation practices that store or sequester carbon and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Since the launch of the program, we've been able to award $1.83 million to projects in fiscal year 2023 and $1.28 million in fiscal year 2024. We also have ongoing funding of $1.5 million per fiscal year going forward. With all of this funding comes a lot of opportunity to get conservation practices on the ground and implemented. The challenge is the requests for funding are often much more than what we have to allocate. So it's very important for us to be able to accurately choose which projects to fund based on which ones provide the greatest climate benefits and are most cost effective. In other words, we want to fund the projects that sequester the most carbon and reduce the most greenhouse gases for the least amount of our state dollars. So, to address this challenge, we developed a Shiny app called the Washington Climate Smart Estimator, or WaCSE for short. When we first load WaCSE, we get this splash screen that just briefly describes what the tool is and that you can look for these little question mark buttons for help and guidance, and reminds the users to download their data and report because the data aren't saved in the application. You'll notice we have 4 tabs: explore the data, calculate your estimate, understand your impact, and about. This explore tab is where the definitions are so that the users are familiar with the terminology and the data source for this app. We also can choose as many counties and practices as we'd like to just explore what the estimates of their greenhouse gas emissions reduced are in terms of metric tons of CO2 equivalents or carbon dioxide equivalents. We can also click the question mark buttons for help and see additional guidance for how to use the different features of the app. The Calculate Your Estimate tab is where you can specify the county and the practice and the number of acres to get a very specific estimate for your practice on your field in your county. So we'll start by adding a county, and then each drop down goes to the next filter. So we'll choose cropland management, and now we only see cropland management practices and the available irrigation types for those practices. And this filters our list down to the specific practice implementations that are in cropland management, the cover crop practice, and non-irrigated. So let's just pick this first legume seasonal cover crop to no-till non-irrigated cropland and say that we're adding this practice to a field of 150 acres. Now, when we add that, we see our DT data table is populated with this row, and we can see that our estimate is 16.12 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalents per year reduced. So if we wanted to add the same practice to Chelan County, but say 200 acres instead, we could click add, change it to 200, and now we can see that we have a estimate of 17.75 metric tons of CO2 equivalents. Since this is a DT data table, we can download the data as a spreadsheet, or we can see different columns that are available. So if you wanted to look at the specific greenhouse gases rather than the total, we can make those columns visible. And we can also look at the bar graph. So this is created with the Giraffe package that has these nice tooltips, and we can also download a PNG of our graph. If we scroll down, we can see our summary of our project. That is 350 acres and 34 metric tons of CO2 equivalents per year. And we have another summary table. And then we can download our report. So we can enter in some dummy farm name and dummy project name. And then these fields are optional, so you can also just leave them blank. But when we click download, it will render a parameterized R Markdown report that will give you a download PDF. We open it, scroll to the top, we can see our report that links to the app, has some context and background information so that this could be a standalone report that could be given to a grower or a rancher that's interested in implementing these practices so they can understand what the estimate means, where the data come from. And this is also what we recommend applicants to submit for their application for the Sustainable Farms and Fields program. It also has all the tables and the plot. And it also has this understand your impact page, which I'll show you in the app. It's the fourth tab, understand your impact, or your third tab, understand your impact. And we can enter in our total reduction from the calculate your estimate tab, which was 34. Click convert, and this runs a lot of the equations from the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency's greenhouse gas equivalencies calculator, which converts this sort of abstract 34 metric tons of CO2 equivalents to more easy to understand or more familiar terms, such as 3,826 gallons of gas consumed, or emissions avoided by 1.7 trash bags of waste recycled instead of landfilled. So it just provides a more fun and easy to understand measurement of your impact from implementing these conservation practices. The last tab is the About, which has the same information as the report, the background context for the data source and what the tool's for. It also has the source code if you're interested at looking at the GitHub repository. It will take you a link so that you can see how the app was built. This was my first app that I've created with Shiny, and I'm pretty proud of it, but there are still some things that I'd like to eventually upgrade, like switching from our Markdown to Porto, switching from Shiny dashboard to BS Lib. But if you're interested, I invite you to check out the app and play around with it yourself at this link, or you can scan the QR code. If you have any comments, thoughts, suggestions, feedback, please feel free to connect with me. I have my personal website, GitHub, and LinkedIn here. And I thank you so much for listening in to my Shiny app showcase. And I hope you have a great rest of ShinyConf 2024.
All right. Thank you so much, JD. So we are back to questions. All right. Hi. All right.
Hi.
So we have a question from Britta. This is brilliant. Is your code base available on GitHub?
Yes, it is. And I posted a link in the chat. And it's also in the slides as well.
All right. Thank you so much. And final question. So this is your first app, really exciting. So how did you go about making the UI UX look so good?
I am I have a very obsessive personality, and so I just spent a lot of time like fixing the formatting and making it look pretty before I actually started like really diving into the actual like data viz and whatnot, like picking out all the themes and the like progress bars and that kind of stuff. I have a lot of fun with that.
Great. Thank you so much. And we'll be moving on to our next talk in a few minutes. So see you in the next one. Thank you so much, JD.
Thank you.